Okay, now we will go on to item 3. Residential design guidelines. We are to consider adoption of a resolution recommending the City Council approve the residential design guidelines and adoption of a resolution recommending the City Council amend chapters 12.84, 12.96, 12.100, 12.108, 12.116, 12.120, 12.124, and 12.200 of Title 12, Land Use of the San Bruno Municipal Code. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's a shame that this has to go after that, because that was obviously a tough task to get through. And this is something that the Planning Commission and we as staff is really excited about, because the residential design guidelines have something that since I've been here, the 8 years I've been here, something that we've talked about, something that's been in motion for the last 2.5 years, and something that's really important to the city of San Bruno. So it's a big accomplishment that the Planning Commission and the City Council and staff that has gotten here to this point. So we're excited about it. And I'm starting to lose my voice because I'm just getting over a cold, so I'll keep my intro short. But this process started about 2.5 years ago. It got kicked off with the Planning Commission City Council study session that provided the initial direction. We've been working with our consultant Larry Cannon, who's worked on a number of projects in San Bruno on this. It went through 4 or 5 different subcommittee meetings that were part Planning Commission, part City Council. That was a really good process that really helped us through this, and it's actually a process that we're going to model other future planning efforts after, because I think it really did work successfully. So the most recent action happened with the Planning Commission and the City Council in a joint study session back in October, where direction was given to the staff to bring forward the guidelines, and there was also direction given in November Planning Commission meeting and November City Council meeting related to the associated code revisions. So based on that recommendation and based on the entire process, you have the residential design guidelines in front of you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura, who will present what changes have been made since the last time you saw it, and a brief background on some of the code changes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Please let me know if you can't hear me very well. I'm not used to sitting down here at the table. I'd like to highlight some of the changes in the guidelines since your last review, and then we'll talk about some of the municipal code changes, again highlighting the things that have changed or we kind of had to update since we talked about it last, and then a little bit about the implementation of the guidelines. So as you know, the details of those changes since the last draft were included in your staff report and also distributed to you with the guidelines, so I hope you've had a chance to review those. I would like to hit on some of the major changes, and then if you had any follow-up questions on those things at the end, of course, we'd be happy to take them. One of the major comments that went through the process and kind of lingered until the end was really clarifying what was required versus what was recommended. So staff thought about this quite a bit, and in conjunction with Larry Cannon, we did update the introduction and really strengthen some of that text. And specifically, we wanted to say that the exterior changes, if they require a building permit, those things must be consistent with the basic design principles. So we really simplified that language in the introduction to try to make that more explicit and clear. And the majority of the guidelines after that are really intended to help homeowners and architects and designers to comply with those basic principles. And so the principles come first, and they are required. Everything else is really supporting, and the details and the information to help people achieve those. So we've tried to outline that more clearly in the introduction. We've also tried to clarify what are the actual requirements, and we've done that by going through the document and adding municipal code citations so that people can easily find the regulations in the municipal code, and will also then be grounded to the code as kind of a constant reminder, as Commissioner Peterson had suggested, that many of these things are requirements and they really must implement those things. Then they'll be able to go back, they're kind of cross-references. So in parentheses throughout the document, we've supplied those references to the municipal code. The second significant change is related to the photographs. We got some feedback from the City Council and the Planning Commission that some of the pictures didn't really ring true. It didn't look like San Bruno to us. So we did update quite a few of the pictures and made some of those selections more representative of the community and throughout the document, as well as in the back of the examples of the small lot development potential. So I think it does look more like the city than it did before. We also, of course, took out the picture that was a negative example, as you had requested. As you know, we reviewed several options for front yard landscaping, and there was quite a bit of discussion about this. Really, this was some of the focus of the discussion with the City Council as well as with the Planning Commission. And so in the guidelines themselves, there are 2 new recommendations that have been added and some improvement on the language based on that direction that we got from you. Specifically, and I think this is on page 36 if you're following along, drought-resistant landscaping is specifically recommended. Water-conserving automatic irrigation systems are specifically recommended. And this is to address that concern that just sprinklers that turn on every morning are not necessarily best, but they can be easily implemented now to conserve water. Also, a new recommendation to say that landscaping designs that specifically conserve water are recommended, but we've asked people to talk to staff about it in advance. And that's because this is really an evolving area out in the world, and certainly here in San Bruno. What's appropriate xeriscaping? We need to work with people on that and develop designs. And so that's why that language was included. Also, to let you know, we got some feedback from the City Council about wanting a little bit more information about landscaping. And so staff is working on some additional landscaping recommendations to help homeowners with actual plant selections and things that would conserve water. And so we are working on that now. And we're going to kind of insert those materials into the document before it goes to City Council. But we expect that to be a couple of recommendations on plants, some photographs, and a reminder of what the tree options are that are already included from our Parks Department, what trees we already recommend. So again, reinforcing that idea that this is a great starting point document, that for a single family or 2-family home, this is what you start with first, and it points you in all the right directions. But since that was a little bit late recommendation in the process, we are still developing that and will be inserted into the document for City Council review. We are also very pleased to have added a new Appendix C, Quick Fixes. This is really, the idea behind this was homeowners that want to make a difference but they don't know where to start, or they can't picture what some of these things may look like on their home. So this is a collection of relatively small changes and some before and after pictures to help inspire homeowners kind of what they can achieve and how the small details make a difference. And so this is a completely new section. So moving on to the municipal code revisions. As you know, we've been working on these kind of hand in hand along the way. Since you've seen it last, we've actually developed the language in conjunction with the City Attorney's Office. We talked about code revisions related to implementation of the design guidelines and related to parking. And so those are very consistent with what you reviewed previously. Most notably, we would be adding a finding of fact to all the discretionary planning approvals so that you, the commission, would decide that the project is consistent with the residential design guidelines. For projects that require a building permit but not a discretionary review by you, the staff would be implementing the residential design guidelines with the authority of the community development director. So that's kind of a summary of those changes. And as you know, we've discussed allowing small houses on substandard lots with a 1-car garage with a use permit. And so we have before you also the code amendments related to that, which we've discussed in the past as well. So I do want to draw your attention a little bit more to the amendments related to landscaping, because this was an item of discussion as we went through. So there was thoughts about when should we require landscaping. You had a little bit differing opinions. We got some feedback from the attorney's office as well. And so what we have before you is that the impervious surface, so the actual paved hard surface that water wouldn't go through, would be limited in the front setback to 60%. That's what's in the guidelines, and so that's the proposal for the code amendment. So that addresses that we don't want the whole front yard paved value that we've had that has not been really clear in our municipal code before. We've written in an exception for substandard lots because we recognize that on a narrow lot, just the required driveway and the walkway are going to take up a significant portion of that. So substandard lots would be at the discretion of the community development director. In regards to the landscaping, then, what we have in the proposed ordinance is that the front yard landscaping would be required when there's an increase in floor area or construction of a new house. And so that's based on some of the feedback that we got from you. We were looking for an appropriate trigger that would be reasonable and legally sound and something that we could implement. And so that's what we have in this proposal before you. As you know, through this process, we've also identified some things in the code that we didn't think warranted change right now, just to implement the residential design guidelines, but some really good thought went into some of those things, and staff does have the notes on that, and we'll be including that in the comprehensive zoning code update that's getting going right now. So a lot of those comments that you've suggested to us along the way, we have notes on those, and we will be thinking about those as well. So you'll be seeing a lot of those things again. So to kind of summarize what's in front of you tonight, there are two resolutions. One is for the design guidelines, and the other is for the ordinance to amend the code. So both of these are recommendations up to the City Council. So if you pass these resolutions, then the guidelines and the ordinance would go to the City Council. The ordinance has to be heard by the City Council 2 times since it's a municipal code change, and then it takes 30 days for it to become effective. So based on the schedule that we have right now, staff would anticipate that the guidelines and the code amendments would go into effect the middle or the end of April in order to meet those legal requirements. So in terms of implementation, what staff anticipates doing is really taking that time as we go through that process to do the staff training that we need to ensure consistency with our front counter staff and with planners to make sure that we have a good awareness of what the requirements are going to be. And then once we have approval of the document, we really would like to do quite a bit of outreach to our designers and architects that have done projects recently. So that's easily accessible to us in our database. So we'd be notifying them, and if they are interested as well, doing a workshop, inviting them down, going over the document, and giving them a chance to ask any questions, since it would be a little bit change in the process and a new place for them to look to see what our expectations are. As we're implementing this, as you know, planning staff has been doing final inspections on all of the discretionary approvals that you approve. We would anticipate doing additional planning inspections, especially as we are getting this process started. We've also had great success with pre-construction meetings, so we'll be doing additional pre-construction meetings, again, especially as we get started. And planners, we've been working very well with our building inspectors and very closely, and we've really had a good increase in the cooperation there, and I think very positive results. And so we'll be continuing that as we implement the residential design guidelines to make sure that all of those details actually get implemented. So I think that wraps it up for our presentation. So we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Through the chair.
Commissioner Marshall?
Not to be nitpicky, but on page 71 of the book, the very last picture where it has a French fence, aren't there some streets in San Bruno that it's not the code to put a front fence right on the property line? Shouldn't we put like a little parentheses to meet city setbacks or something like that, just so people don't get the wrong idea?
True, it would have to be on an exterior side yard, but we could add a bracket there.
Yeah, just to meet city setbacks.
Okay.
Because I know some streets you have to be 3 feet back, some streets can be right on the property.
Correct.
Thank you.
Through the chair.
Commissioner Misha?
Couple comments. I have a suggestion for the plants. There are various parks and other recreational areas that we have in the vicinity that have on their websites plant listings of what their xeriscaping is. maybe it would be better to identify those, or as an additional information to direct to those websites, because then those will be updating and adding to their collection of what is actually xeriscaping in this area. That's one. The second is, Laura, I mentioned this to you in the beginning, about taking any mentioning of any addresses or any specific information from the examples. I saw that there's a civil engineer or engineer's information plus the house address that should probably be taken off from the example. The third one was, I had just had a question about, I just went to the seminar about pavers and about the fact that there are pavers out there that manufacturers are making at this point that would be considered providing ample water absorption on the site, but they're so closely spaced that it's ADA accessible. And how does the city plan to deal with those you know, minor product, I guess would product information be enough to satisfy the city in that respect for the 80%, I guess, is one question.
I have two thoughts about that. I think the first is the comprehensive zoning code update includes a very detailed sustainability audit that is going into quite a bit of detail about a lot of sustainability topics and providing us an opportunity to bring in best practices. So I think that this code language will be sufficient for now, knowing we'll have updated code language relatively quickly, and these products are fairly new and coming online. Right. I would also say that we will be inclined to use the language and the standards that are in our regional NPDES stormwater permit, so that we are using the same calculations that the regional water board is using, so that we won't be duplicating calculations or doing math a different way. But those are the things we're going to be talking about through the update.
And my last question was, I didn't hear anything about feedback as time goes on and we make, we hear comments, etc. Is there a process for feedback, or at this point it's up to the city council to decide?
Celebrate that it's done and talk about it next week.
All right.
I think certainly we're going to have to revisit through the zoning code update process, if nothing else for text edits and then minor updates. So I think we will certainly look at it at that point, and then the question will be, how quickly is the community changing, and are the community expectations changing?
Well, my question was, because it is so close to being approved, that if the city council or the planning commission was thinking of a feedback or loop methodology, that it would be included at this point, because it will be difficult to do it later on, just as an FYI.
So the follow-up question would be, what seems like a reasonable amount of time to do a report to the Planning Commission? Something we could bring back to you and say, this is what we've been doing and this is how it's been going.
Or the comment arises from, if the public comes back and says, something in this doesn't work for us, that there be a feedback and say, how do we bring that up and incorporate that, or make it part of the discussion?
In the beginning of this document, we say for questions or assistance, please contact. I mean, you could add some type of statement in there, or feedback on how to make this document more usable, or something along those lines.
Something
you could just
along
add
those
it
lines.
there, and they would. In the real world, how it would work is that they would tell Laura, they would tell Matt, hey, I don't like this part of the document, and we'd explain why, and then eventually would take that feedback and revise the document if those were valid concerns. But if we wanted just to add that statement to that line here,
I would prefer that. Then
okay.
it leaves an open-ended invitation.
Any other comments?
Through the chair.
Commissioner Smoot?
Yeah, I would just like to congratulate Larry and staff on what I think is a great document. This is a great point for the city. I wish other cities would do this type of thing. It's wonderful. It's great.
I would second that. Anyway, any
Through the
other
chair.
comments? Commissioner Peterson?
I agree. There was an awful lot of work on it, and consultants certainly had to corral all the comments together, which was a big task. I have a question about the page 8, the one you said is a requirement, it said these design principles should be followed. So that to me means sort of a conditional, approximately required statement. And what I should preface this with, the way I'm thinking is, I imagine the people who want to get what they want, whether it meets this or not. If they can't determine what is required and what is you wish you had it, you're going to have a problem with that.
I agree. We call it a requirement on an earlier portion of the document, so we should change that should to a shall.
Okay. Then the next thing is that this contains a tremendous amount of zoning ordinance and municipal code. Are you representing that this contains all the zoning and municipal code that you need to do a conditional use permit, for example?
No. I mean, it has it all as it relates to design of your home, but there's going to be other code references that you would have to go to throughout a use permit process. Yeah, and it explains that on page 5.
Okay.
But I can add this. As we're doing our zoning code update, we're going to frame our zoning code in a way that it relates to this. So as someone picks up the new zoning code, they'll be able to pick it up and realize what they have to do an addition. And one component of that will be the residential design guidelines. So while this won't be all inclusive of all the zoning code itself will be inclusive of the residential design guidelines. And someone who's following that and picking up a project will know to come to this for the design aspects of their project.
Very good.
I guess I was trying to understand how if a resident reads this and thinks this is all the rules, should they be cautioned to get a copy of the zoning code? Would that be enough?
Well, we do mention it in here. We could strengthen the language some, but I think it is amply covered in here, and it will be covered with front counter staff talking to someone who's at the front counter, and it will be covered within the zoning code.
Okay. Just lastly on that, if that's what it takes, maybe it could be another document that looks like Residential Guidelines Part 2, the zoning code. So if once someone leaves the counter, they can have some reason to feel they have all the requirements.
I agree, and I think there should also be some type of online port, something online where you could get everything within one screen.
Right. But without I have a lot of stuff on screen. When I really want to work with it, I print it. Okay, the second comment is I'm really impressed to see the submittal examples in here. I hope this is as much a help to applicants as I think it would be, because I've been hearing about it from them for a long time. And then lastly, you say during the month of April, staff will conduct outreach to architects and designers who have submitted applications to notify them about the guidelines. I was thinking it would have been nice to do that before it went to the council, because if you find anything really significant in that process, it'd be nice to fix it ahead of time. But
architects were involved early on in the process. We interviewed architects early on in the process, so it was a process that did include architects and designers that have worked on applications in San Bruno.
I'm smiling because I'm thinking some of them were simply either staff or commission members.
There was more than that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Through the chair, one last comment.
Certainly, by all means,
From me.
Commissioner Mishra, go for it.
I just wanted to extend my gratitude that it is a document which I envisioned at the beginning and when I was giving out my requirements of laundry list of requirements, that it is printable, it is something that someone can print at home, which is great. And I do enjoy the aspect that it is not a document where, and it's happened to me, where a client comes and says, oh, look at this one, that's what they want, so draw me that one. And it's not a document that says that. It's a document that gives a lot of variety, a lot of insight to what the city intends to do with the project, which is what I was looking for. So thank you very much.
Any other comments or questions by the commissioners?
Do we have to, through the chair, do we have to do these resolutions one at a time?
Yes, we do.
Okay, I move that the commission adopt resolution 2010-1.
Second.
Okay, there is a motion and a second on the floor to adopt resolution number 2010-1, and there is a question.
No, there's a second.
Oh, I think there already was a second. It's going to be a roll call vote, correct?
Yep. Commissioner Smoot.
Aye.
Commissioner Marshall.
Aye.
Vice Chair Peterson.
Aye.
Chair Chase.
Aye.
Commissioner Biassatti.
Aye.
Commissioner Mishra.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, that's one of them.
Okay, through the chair,
Commissioner Peterson.
I move the commission adopt resolution number 2010-2.
Second.
Got a motion and a second.
Commissioner Smoot.
Aye.
Commissioner Marshall.
Aye.
Vice Chair Peterson.
Aye.
Chair Chase.
Aye.
Commissioner Biassatti.
Aye.
Commissioner Mishra.
Aye.
And Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Okay, that
Motion
as well.
passes. And before we close, I'd also like to thank Larry. It's been awesome working with him on this document for the past 3 years, and I think he's done a great job.
You did do a great job. Everybody did a great job.
Yeah. It just shows the amount of detail that went into the document.
That's right. Next thing is city staff discussion, really. I mean, who's going to go on the architectural review committee, right?
Yes. Do we have volunteers? March 11th.
I'm in.
All right, Commissioner, we had Smoot, Commissioner Mishra, and Commissioner Biassatti with 3 first, and we have backup on Peterson.
Will T-Mobile be there?
I don't think so. Maybe. It could be.
All right. Is there anything else? Oh, yeah. Is there any other discussion on anything? No? Well, then in that case, let this thing end tonight. We're over.